for having me. It's been a
Yeah,
while.
you and I met last year in Austin. As many of my guests, by the way. I met a lot of people in that trip, I guess, in that event. It was in Austin, Texas. We were there for the Fully Charged Live event, in which we were talking all kinds of electric car centric topics, right? And you were
Yep.
there. And you are from Mexico. You're from
Yeah. I'm from Guadalajara.
Guadalajara, a town
Guadalajara.
that I don't know. I need to go and
Oh,
visit.
you need to come and visit. I'll host you.
Yes, we need to go
It
to
will be my
Guadalajara.
honor.
And I was talking to you about the fact that your city has a new fleet of electric horseless carriages at this point. What do you guys
Yeah.
call them?
Calandrias.
Calandria. Okay. And I had a
Yeah.
guess. I don't think we've aired that episode yet. But I think
So
it's
that,
gonna air pretty soon. And it was pretty interesting because I never thought about it, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's pretty cool. Like, yeah, this should be electric. Why not? Right? It's like I know you. I know the fact that you were saying, and he was talking about that. The fact that people were like they were upplaying the fact that maybe like animal cruelty or whatever. I know there is some truth to that because city streets shouldn't. They're not particularly set for animals, right? Like I
yeah.
know horses can well, the same thing. Horses are breathing all that bad air that we're all breathing, right?
Yep.
Uh, then they're kind of chaotic and stuff. And I know he talked about like the same thing happening in New York City, but in New York City, the activists didn't win. And maybe it's the fact that a lot of those carriages are inside of the park, and so they're kind of shielded from all the chaos of the city.
Uh,
So maybe that's
well,
why.
I don't know.
But
It's like any project. If it has political backing, it'll get through.
yeah,
And in this case, the local municipal government really wanted this to happen, so it was gonna happen regardless. So
whether it's good for anyone or not, we're making this thing happen.
yeah. But it's
Yeah,
interesting. Yeah, some of the things we talked about when we were in Austin is the whole, we all EV enthusiasts, tech enthusiasts, we all consume global media, and there's very little news to what's happening in Mexico and most of Southern America in terms of EV adoption and all these things.
yeah,
And for us that are in it, we want to share. We want to share, and we also want to be part of that global community. It's somewhat not as interesting in some aspects and very interesting in others, and that's basically what we wanted to share with you guys today. Um, we we're very excited to see what the next couple of years has in store for us. Mexico, like in many other things where one works, it's somewhat behind. We're like 3-4 years behind. We're like where the U.S. was around 2014 in terms of what people are thinking about the product, what government is doing about the product. Um, and the cool thing is, like in many other things that permeate to other countries that are not main markets, is that we get to learn from you guys. We get to see what worked, what didn't work, what came out as a standard, a business practice, a business model, and try to cut all that fat and just build a lean product because we have less capital, so we can't afford to make as many mistakes.
yeah. So maybe being behind it's at least advantageous, right? In some aspects because you don't have to make the same mistakes we're doing.
Hopefully, that's
Yes.
the idea. That's
Yeah.
the idea. And basically, I our group, our house group, so we develop, implement, and maintain EV solutions for a variety of customers. The largest one being Tesla. We're not their only contractor. We're one of several here in Mexico, a handful. Um, but through that partnership and other partnerships and other customer experiences we've had, it's been very interesting. People are surprised that you can drive your Tesla from Mexico City all the way to Texas. We have superchargers along the whole route, and the supercharger is expanding continuously. As a EV driver, it's very very exciting because I always tell people like, I mean, this is possible in Mexico in a Tesla. Imagine other brands are 5 years behind Tesla in emerging markets. So
Yeah.
Tesla really is opening up. It's the leader. It's como se dice en español, abrir brecha. They're
Yeah.
clearing the
Breaking
path
ground.
for, yeah, they're breaking ground for many of us. And the interesting thing is now that other brands are getting into the game in a more serious manner, they get to other markets and they go. The question they have is, how did Tesla do it in this country?
Yeah.
And and that becomes your calling card of sorts. It's not as complicated as it seems. It's more of a having projects that are make sense, that are done right, and
Yeah.
sometimes mediating what some people called Mexico. No, some people call Mexico organized chaos.
Chaos. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, it seems the U.S. is very much the same, politically speaking. Anyways, right? It's in the last years. It's like, yeah, we used to think Mexico was a real mess down there, but look at us. We're like, Jesus,
Well,
you know. But I think, I think it's, I think you guys are moving nice along, right? Like the fact that you have superchargers, and you have Teslas. Is it still kind of rare to see a Tesla over there, or now they're starting to? I know there's certain
there.
markets, right? Like
Yeah.
you're in one of these affluent cities, right? And so there's probably a lot of
So
people that
yeah,
have.
the three largest cities would be Mexico City being number one, Monterrey being second, and Guadalajara being third. You start to see at least one or two a day, which is a lot for our market. I'd estimate, this is not an official number, I just the top of my head. There's around 3,000 Mexican Teslas, Mexican VIN Teslas, um, circulating in Mexico, and we are the one of the markets where American brands and models get to cohabitate with European make and models. Like, we have all the European brands. We have Renault, we have Peugeot, we have Citroën, we have all the Asian market brands, and their European version of cars. So sometimes you're at a stoplight and you'll have this enormous American pickup next to this little itty tiny little. Have you seen the Renault Twizy? It's a two-seater. One goes in the front, one goes in the back. Electric
Really?
car.
Oh wow.
So you get all these type of weird situations, and it's fun. The one place where it becomes a chaos is in charging standards. So as a in Mexico, what are called NOMs, or Norma Oficial Mexicana, it's kind of like a FCC or IEEE of sorts. They're like this government body. I think IEEE isn't government. There's this government body that goes, these are standards and units and best practices for, let's say, electricity or water or whatever.
Hmm.
Within Mexico, there's been no defined standard in terms of what charging standard and plug you're supposed to have. There is some standards around how you should like install a charger. Nothing revolutionary. I mean, just for electrical purposes, Mexico is pretty much the same as the U.S., just a more lenient in some stuff.
You guys are 60 hertz now, right? Or
Yeah, so
yeah,
60
okay.
hertz and mostly 110 outlets for regular use, but two-phase and three-phase is starting to become common in houses.
Oh,
Um,
uh,
so
really? So
yeah,
wow, that's not happening here. I think it's all industrial here. It's only like residential's all single phase, split phase, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and part of it, three-phase is still very rare. Dual phase or bifásico is more common for medium homes. And still you find areas where there's a lot of like single phase 110 services, and when that
Oh.
happens, it's a bit of a situation.
Yeah,
It's a
because
cuss.
you max out, right? What is the max that you can do? Like 100 amps,
The
maybe?
the max power draw for us in 110 single phase is like 40 amps.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah,
So
yeah, which
that's
is
quite
like
low.
5 kilo, 5 point something kilo.
5 kilowatts.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, but then
That,
if you
by the
have to,
way, to give the people perspective, that's about a large, a large home AC unit. My AC units, I think, draws about 5 kilowatts. So
yeah,
that's it. You're maxed out there. You can't if you have a large house and you have that service. Yeah, you would be able to run your AC, but you won't be able to run your microwave while you're doing both. You have to turn one
well,
off, kind of thing.
yeah, and it becomes, I mean, all I guess you could call it procedure, or all rules and regulations are a product of living style, right?
Yeah.
So in the US, conditioning your space, either it to be warm or hot or something, is very common.
Yeah.
In Mexico, for the most part, most months, it's really optional. I mean, um, and thus our houses are actually, they're built with solid materials. They're not as properly insulated.
Hmm.
Central air and things like that are not common here. When you do
Yeah.
have air, like what I have here in my office, it's a mini split unit, which
Yeah.
is something very common in Europe and very, very rare in the US.
Yeah, and they're
um,
starting to happen. That's kind of the new generation, and we skip because we've been using our traditional central air units for so long. But yeah,
exactly.
yeah, you guys are skipping that whole super inefficient way of, getting air or accommodating our temperature inside buildings and stuff. So you're
Exactly.
going to the next generation with split air. Those are very efficient. Those will run at 110 all day, and you can
Yeah, you
pretty
can
much
do
just sit there.
110 or 220. But well, going back to my original charging standards, what's happening now, it's we're starting to see a variety of connectors when you go to public locations, especially with level 2 charging. So you go to a mall, and it's one of the only locations I know of where you'll find a GBT Chinese standard, the J1772, which is the regular North American standard, and the
Hmm.
Tesla North America connector, all in the same space.
Ah,
Yeah.
okay.
And Chinese brands, several of them have, Jack, Biak, and a couple others. They have dealers just as big as any other major American.
Wait, so both of those standards are in the same? Well, yeah, in Mexico. That means in the same territory, you have
Yeah,
two standards. Oh, that's so weird. That means
yeah.
compatibility is a real issue then, or it could be a real issue.
Well, for example, when European models get here, it is a bit tricky because they even though it's 220, it's 220 50 hertz, which is something very technical, but it's just a problem. And there's ways around it, but it's just not practical. A lot of the type, oh, because that's another port that we're starting to see prop up. We haven't seen it in public locations, but a lot of fleet vehicles, for a variety of purposes that get imported by the client, they have that connector. And so that one is a bit tricky. But for example, when you have GBT for level 2, even though the connector is different, electrically it can work with the same 220 that we use here and you guys use over there. It's just a weird plug.
Hmm.
And then when it does get complicated is when you do level 3, because that's a whole different thing. But
That's
there's
DC
very,
charging.
yeah,
That's DC
DC
fast
fast
charging.
charging.
Yeah.
So the only real DC fast charging we really have as a network that you can go, like, I can plan a route on it, is the supercharger network. You
Tesla.
could count with my fingers how many universal DC chargers we have, and most of the ones we have will be Chatham CCS 50 kilowatt, which is, has been the lowest speed for high speed.
Yeah. It's
Um,
entry level
but
DC charging.
yeah, and they're non-networked, and most of them are what's it called? A demo pilot of sorts, either from a brand or from a government entity. Here, UDG operates the two we have here in Guadalajara because they bought a fleet. They bought 35 Nissan Leafs like 3-4 years ago, as cars for people at the university. UDG is Universidad de Guadalajara.
Hmm.
It's a very large university. It's like 40,000, 50,000 students. I don't know. Don't quote me on that. But they have an interesting program, and they bought some of these. So the two CCS chargers you can go to here in Guadalajara, they're free, but they're the UDGs. and they were bought with that purpose. And you can't really travel in a non-Tesla vehicle as of now. I have people I know who, we also have the e-tron, we also have the iPace, we also have cars like this, which are great cars. I mean, as a car, but even going to Puerto Vallarta, which is a very popular beach destination here in Jalisco, and you'll probably make it. You'll be running almost on empty when you get there, and then it'll be very hard to charge. And if you do, it's going to be a level two. There is no level three. And compare that to Tesla, where they have in all major roads and all major touristy areas in Mexico, they have chargers set up in a way where it's possible to go there no problem. It really speaks to the commitment they have to this idea to EV mobility and to Mexico, because the other portion that's holding back universal charging in our country is just the way part of energy law and how it was partially reformed. Then some stuff was missing, and then we had a federal government change, and then the new federal government has had really wacky ideas in terms of what they expect out of renewables and EVs and all these things. Um, and in some instances, either for political gain or I don't know, they're really trying to undermine what little we've advanced in these regards, you know. So it's complicated. Currently, if you deploy a DC fast charging network, I mean, everyone's had this problem. All the universal networks, they have an origin of either it's a legal settlement or some other backer that really encourages them to operate and be born and exist, then they're not profitable yet. And for Tesla, it's just like it's it's a tool for them. It allows them to sell cars to make it possible.
Yeah.
It's more of, I appreciate the network, but I think it's also more for them bragging rights. They go like, you know, I mean, what other EV charging network could you drive from Mexico City all the way to Vancouver or
Yeah.
things like this? Or they also have now the Trans Canada route. There are several Trans US routes, and when they complete the Veracruz charger, they'll have the Trans Mexico route.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
So
they could afford to not be profitable because, well, they have the largest fleet of electric vehicles in the world, right? So that's why they have to
yeah,
do it. It's
exactly.
the only way that they can sell these cars and have them be
And
compelling.
for all of us, it's very interesting. We're steady and we are following them. Like, you know, like they are the ones who can get the market to shift, not just in consumers' heads, but also regulation
Yeah.
and everything that's required. And so when one looks at chargers, if you go to a universal charger scheme and you don't have any backing either from government or corporation or brands, it becomes very hard to do the investment. And then on top of that, CRE, which is Comisión Reguladora de Energía, entity in Mexico, they are the ones who would be like, you know, this is how permitting would work. And there is some framework for electrolineras, which is what they call them. I hate the term.
Electrolineras. So,
Yeah,
by the way, those who don't speak Spanish is because gasolinerías or gasolineras,
it's
right?
gas station.
Those are gas stations, but this is what? Electrolineras?
Electrolineras. So
Okay.
they have some framework for you to go like, you know, I want to set up my electrolinera, but the terms aren't aren't very flexible, and they almost seem like they're designed to block people from investing right now fully in this. The only one doing it in a substantial way in Mexico is Tesla, and
Yeah.
like you said, it's because they can afford to. They don't need to profit
Hmm.
from
I
these points.
I think that we have the same problems here. I've talked to several people now that are in your business, right? And it's the same thing. It's like you still can't make money using these, so they're still too early. We're trying to figure it out, but yeah,
Yeah,
complex.
And then
Um,
on the other hand, what we were talking about when we first began our chat, we have the point where we are still in the final stages of this. Remember the Blu-ray HD DVD battle? What was gonna win? So
yeah,
this tends to happen in several categories or markets, and it seems that for EVs we're in the final stages of knowing what's going to happen for North America. It's been well defined what's going to happen in Europe and Asia. Even Teslas for those markets have the common port,
and
but
in
here,
Europe, yeah,
yeah, but here it's still TBD, to be determined. And when we look at the market, we look at regulation and we look at market opportunities. We really can't afford to be all like ChargePoint, right? They started 10, 12 years ago.
hmm
They almost went bankrupt and then they got another infusion of capital, but they started way too early. Um, and for all the things they learned of what works and what doesn't for a charging location and charging speed and all these things and charging as a service, um, we 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 still wanna I'm almost sure everything's gonna end up being a CCS North America for our market as well. Um,
yeah,
but we still wanna play it safe, and that's basically what we're waiting. Legislation on one side that allows the sale of energy as a service through a charger, which is still they say it's allowed, but somewhat complicated. Why yes, why no? And then on top of that, being all like, what's the format? If I were to right now be all like, well, I want to um, implement my own network with, I don't know, a dozen sites, and be able to service the largest customer base would be Tesla, and
yeah,
not being able to service them, it'd be very hard to do this.
yeah. But
Um,
it's weird because you could only serve them at a level 2 format, right? You can't.
well, you
Can
can
you
service this. Yeah, you
can
can.
can you own
You
a
can serve it.
supercharger, like an
You can't.
independently owned
No,
supercharger? No,
you
right? This
can't.
is
You can't do that. They do have a program where, I mean, the way Tesla gets to the supercharging locations is mostly a mystery to me. I just know it's a unique format. It's not like a regular, some locations are, but it's not like a regular, I come and lease. They have some sort of agreement with the location. But in terms of, like, for example, if you were a universal charger and you're like, well, my biggest potential customer base would be people having a Tesla. You either have to have a CHAdeMO adapter at every station, which also limits you to 50 kilo, which for bigger Teslas is, well,
slow.
it's low. I mean, they're still going to be there for more than an hour. Um,
Yeah,
and and then we've seen ABB with EVgo. They have a custom cable that's like Tesla compatible, but it's basically the CHAdeMO adapter built into
a cable.
a cable. It's just as fast. And we are. I don't know if you've seen this on news, but they're about to release a CCS1 to North America Tesla adapter. So that'll give you around 120, 150 kilo.
Oh, CCS to Tesla.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
Well,
yeah, yeah. Uh-huh.
yeah, that's been spotted. It's been testing in Korea. Korea and Japan have the same electrical standards as the U.S. and Mexico and
Okay.
Canada.
And so this is third party. There's someone else. It's not through Tesla.
No,
It's
it's
not
the
through.
Tesla. It's a Tesla adapter.
Oh, it's a Tesla adapter. Okay.
Yeah,
So
and
it's gonna
unlike the
be
chat,
reliable, but it's gonna be probably super expensive, just like CHAdeMO.
it'll be like $500. I mean,
Okay. Well,
I
yeah,
mean,
that's
it's not.
expensive.
It's expensive, but I mean, it's within reason if you need it.
If
If
you
you're
need
within a
it,
route, yeah. And hopefully it won't be as chunky as a CHAdeMO adapter.
yes, because that thing is massive. It's like a
Yeah,
round thing and this
it
long. It was
looks it
it.
looks like the cable, from the Back to the Future movie when they connect it for the lightning.
Yes.
I think it's even bigger than that.
And by the way, that one was kind of a mystery, right? We don't know who bought it, who owned it. I never seen one. Like I've always seen just pictures of it, and right,
Mhm.
like it wasn't. I don't think it was a success. Like people didn't buy that thing. I guess because we don't
The
need it here in the states. It was
Yeah,
it was kind of like a
I
weird
have
thing that
one.
you
The
could.
CHAdeMO adapter, I have one,
You have one?
and
Okay,
yeah,
okay. You're probably the only person I know that owns one.
yeah, and we have like like less than 10 CHAdeMO stations in all Mexico, but I need it for testing purposes.
Okay.
Um,
Was expensive, right? That original was really
yeah, it
expensive.
was $600.
Okay. Yeah, I guess it's not that bad. I remember thinking like, man, that's for a cable. Who is gonna buy an
Well,
adapter for
the
six
thing
hundred?
is, it has a controller inside and it has firmware. I mean, it's not just a cable adapter.
It's not easy. It has to convert one format to another. So you basically have to have the electronics that were inside of a CHAdeMO compatible car into
Exactly.
this portable unit thing. Well,
Exactly.
on
So
both sides, right?
once this plays out, because the we go like, well, if there's no official norm and we have all these charging standards for level two, and then we have all these considerations for level three because it's a larger investment, then there's no real way to right now monetize or basically just subsidize this investment. We're kind of in a limbo, and then on top of that, we have what I consider a risk, the Chinese companies trying to flood the market with their connector and trying to convert this market into their connector. And
Uh,
yeah, it's a whole thing.
well, I
And
mean, they pose a real threat, right? Because there's a lot of manufacturers, and they have cars that are, I think, they're lower price vehicles coming out of China, right? So I think they're
exactly.
compatible. They're, I
I'm all for all types of electric vehicles. I have no quarrel with Chinese goods. Everything's made in China. The thing here is the fragmentation of the market. You're just going to make the conversation harder for everyone trying to get into it, both
yeah,
operators, CPOs, integrators, and just someone who wants a car.
yeah.
And it's like every if I could have a dollar for every time I've had the conversation, why does Tesla use this connector and blah blah blah, and you go like, well, there's technical considerations, but it's mostly a market thing. And then there's a whole conversation around it, and they just go like, oh, I wish it was this one connector. And I mean, no one knows exactly why, I guess, outside Tesla, but for there must be a reason. I had an understanding the Tesla North American connector could do DC fast much higher than the CCS standard because it came out before that.
At the time, I think it's everything. I think it's the fact that CHAdeMO and CCS combos are just not sleek. They're big, they're bulky, they're I know their designs are optimized for compatibility, right, across
Mm-hmm.
a varied number of vehicles and designs and stuff. Where Tesla doesn't have to do that. Tesla's, they're built the same. They know what they're going into. The length of the cable is the same. They're super short. You because they know what the car looks like. And
Yeah.
now, could every other manufacturer? Yeah, because does it work? Because obviously that connector works. I mean, we're seeing speeds of up to 200 kilowatts on that little connector,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's
Yeah.
nice and sleek and small, and you're like, and it works. Why isn't everyone else doing their connectors as sleek as that? It's like, I think it's because it's not optimized for compatibility. And
Well, it's a thing. It's a thing, but it also, I guess, depends on my personal theory. I have no way to substantiate this. Is it's a whole market thing where they go like, we know because of what we want to do and the amount of cars we want to push out and the type of ecosystem we need to generate over the next 10, 15 years to have
mm-hmm,
a fighting chance. We first need to do this thing that's for us,
mm-hmm,
and then we might standardize. And it's mostly for North America because of the amount of cars that are rolling in North America.
yeah,
Europe and Asia has a more healthy mix of brands.
yeah,
Yeah. And I think part of it is that there could be just a pure technical reason. It goes like, no, it's this technical thing. But
well, like I said, I don't think it's just pure technical. I think it's also design wise, right? They have a very, very like strict aesthetic. The end user experience, it's a thing too.
and like none other. I mean, I've tried Electrify America. I've tried the ChargePoint ones. I've tried the EVgo ones, and it takes like 10 minutes to get the charge going.
Especially
It's
because you gotta like, who owns this? How am I gonna pay it?
yeah,
How does the whole thing, right? Where Tesla's is just seamless. You plug it in, it's got your information. It's just charging. It's just going. You don't have
yeah. So
much control of how fast you want to charge or anything. That's just the system just
just
does
goes.
this thing, and for the most part, it's pretty fast. Um, yeah, yeah, it's interesting. He said that he's open to other manufacturers opening that system. Right? I don't think there's no takers. I don't think anybody else is. They're all either joining
Um,
CCS combo, right? I think.
I'm not entirely sure. I mean, once again, that's information only Tesla would have.
Mm-hmm.
We're external contractors and very limited what I can share. And
Mm-hmm.
even then, I don't know. But I'd imagine they have a plan. These aren't people that don't have a plan. They have a plan,
Yeah.
and I think it's playing out nicely. But we'll see. We'll see. The Cybertruck, as in the pickup trucks here in Mexico are very popular, just like in the U.S. There's so many people waiting for one, but that
Yeah.
thing is gonna have a massive battery. I mean, we're gonna need probably
Do we know?
twice.
Do we know the size? We don't, right?
Well,
We don't know.
just extrapolating numbers based on like
Well,
what
the
mileage you can do and stuff
the
like that.
Rivian,
Minimum, yeah,
the Rivian's coming out, and that
yeah,
has CCS combo. It's got up to 180 kilowatt hour battery. So
yeah,
yeah,
exactly. That's almost 200 kilowatts. It's a massive battery.
it's a massive battery.
So
Yeah.
it's gonna be something around that number between 150 and 200. Some people say even 250 kilowatt.
Yeah,
I think
could
that's a
be.
bit too much. I don't know. They extrapolate all that from doing like, if this current mass weight and battery can do this,
Not at the prices that
that's
he's saying, also too, right? Like that one
well,
again.
it's a real
Like
steal for the price. I mean,
it's look at yeah, it's vaporware at this point. It doesn't exist. He's got plans. He could do it.
exactly.
I don't know if he could do it. I mean, I don't even know if those orders are real, right? Like, I don't know if a quarter million people would buy that car.
It's true.
Um,
It's true.
so he's got some info there, and then he's going to use that info to then make the real product. And the real product's not going to be the thing that he presented, obviously, because then that thing can't even exist in most markets. It's illegal. It doesn't
Yeah.
meet standards. It doesn't, you know what I mean? So,
But even
yeah,
if it just did the things on paper and looked entirely different, it's still a very compelling product.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, I think we'll see because like for example, when you set up level 2 charging at homes here, um, we're supposed to not go over 32 amps or 7 kilowatts as their max peak rate. When you down rate them, for example, a wall box connector or what's it called, the EV box connector. We are suppliers, and we are the official supplier for EV box in Mexico. We saw your interview a couple of weeks ago
yeah,
with the
with the
CEO.
box. Uh-huh.
Yeah, they're great people to work with. Um, and basically, basically, it's interesting because if you want to go higher, if you want to go, the max you could go is at 11 kilowatts, which is like 48 amp. You have to set up a separate meter in Mexico to have the ability to pull that much from the grid, and B, you get like a special rate, which is not cheaper. It's just it doesn't go into the whole subsidy scheme for power pricing in Mexico. In Mexico, for some certain amount of power consumption in some zones in Mexico, they get a certain amount of subsidy within the cost of power. And it ends up working out because if you were to add your house consumption to your EV consumption, for many people, they would lose that subsidy because they become high consumption clients. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But what I tell always people when I talk to people from CFE, I go like, you make us do this whole complicated thing where we do a second meter, a second connection to the power grid, and this whole second thing, not to mention the paperwork, which is horrible, where when your digital meters could just use CAN bus to talk over the same copper to the car charger and be like, this amount, bill it differently, you know? This power amount, bill it differently. But no, they make you do this entirely separate thing instead of
Mm.
modifying their billing system.
Wow.
It's,
Okay.
but I mean, como like they say in Mexico, peor es nada. It'd
Yeah.
be worse. It'd be worse to not have a policy on around
Yeah.
how to do that.
And it's because
And
it's not volume, right? These customers, it's not like they have a ton of that stuff happening. That
mhm.
the inefficiencies of that process. It's not hurting them yet. So as soon as it does, as soon as you
Mhm.
hit critical mass, I think then eventually they'll change that. hopefully.
Exactly, because we have several customers that go like, I want the higher speed, I want the better price, but I live, for example, in an apartment complex,
Hmm.
and the metering bank is set. You really can't add to it.
Ah, okay.
So,
Wow,
so it
that's
becomes,
yeah. That's something that we don't have to go through here. Like here, we're fine. You know, most of our uh, homes and buildings could easily provide up to 22 kilowatts, right? So it's usually
yeah,
older homes, 100 amps at a split phase, or now 200. Most of the newer um, buildings, I think the newest code, I think is 200. You know, at split phase. So yeah, you're
yeah,
talking quite a
yeah.
bit.
No, here we have that growing pain yet to overcome because our grids were never scaled to that size because we don't heat, we don't cool. So
Hmm.
it's part of that. And then the other part of that is even if everyone could afford to have a second meter and it will viable, you can't have everyone just pulling power at the same time. So there has to be some sort of load balancing scheme,
Yeah,
either implemented by the utility or by the brand, especially in apartment buildings. EV Box makes units that make this possible, and we are now getting to the point even here in Mexico where we go like the first two or three people in that building to get an EV, they'll get their own meter, or we're gonna we tie off the same meter they have for the apartment most of the time. But three vehicles onwards, you can't do that. Like you've uh, exhausted the available extra slack you had in the transformer of
and then
that
transform.
building and all these things. So we go like, well, we could put up six chargers and then themselves they could negotiate, what speed's going to happen, and your cars will be charged in the morning. It's just going to happen in
The
this
the
organized manner.
So the speed is going to be relative to how many of the chargers are being on or charging.
Yeah, we go like, you have max amount, you can demand from the transformer. You set up a larger circuit, but even if it's a 100, 200 amp circuit and you have six EVs charging from it, you still need to balance it out. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
And
So you find out that like there's not a lot of headroom in these transformers that usually are using on
no,
the supply.
unlike US building code, we build pretty much
Right up to the
like,
line.
yeah, right up to the line. Like CFE here, like tells you, oh, whatever rating, you can max load it to 85% of that rating, which is somewhat typical. But then you get to the site and you survey it, and it's running at 85%.
Already.
Yeah, yeah. So
Wow.
sometimes you have to get creative and like either really derate it, or
Yeah.
in some cases just be like, we really can't do it, not safely.
Wow. Yeah. So those are challenges, yeah, that you guys have. Because see, the thing is that people don't get is that these cars, they're sucking so much energy. I mean, you're like all the energy that your house is using all
Yeah,
day. You know, that's what you're doing in an hour, or could be doing in an hour into these vehicles,
yeah,
right? So they're super power hungry, and having one or two, that's where we're at right now. It's fine. You'll take the extra little, headroom that they'll have, but it's gonna become a real problem. And I know eventually as they start becoming more common and stuff, they'll start replacing those transformers and start giving you headrooms in
yeah,
in all the little grids, right, and the little sections of the grid, and the problem will go away, but it's going to take some time. I know some of that equipment is there for 50 years, right?
yeah.
It's this is stuff that it's made and engineered to be there for a long time.